The night the moon broke, silence swept through the Blood Moon pack. The forest seemed to hold its breath, every leaf trembling beneath a sky that glowed silver and red, as if heaven itself mourned for what was about to happen. Beneath that fractured light, a young woman knelt on the cold stone floor of the Alpha's hall. Her name was Luna Arwen, an Omega born without power, born without worth. All her life, she had loved Alpha Kael, the man who stood before her now, tall, fierce, and untouchable. To her, he was the storm and the calm that followed it. His voice could shake a room or soothe an infant. His presence alone silenced entire packs. But to him, she was invisible. A shadow at the edge of the pack's glory. She had grown up watching him lead, admiring the strength in his gaze, the fire that burned in his every word. He was everything she was not, strong, proud, certain of his destiny, and she was everything the pack despised, weak, hesitant, and soft-hearted. In their world, strength was survival. Compassion was a flaw. Yet against all reason, her heart had chosen him. She had believed that love could soften him, that somewhere behind those silver eyes was a man who could see her, who could feel what she felt. For years she had carried that secret affection, nurturing it like a tiny flame against the endless cold, until the night she gathered enough courage to speak. That night the pack had gathered for the lunar ceremony. The torches burned low, shadows danced across the marble floor, and the elders spoke blessings to the moon goddess. When Kael stepped forward, the crowd bent in reverence. His wolf aura radiated power, ancient, dominant, unyielding. Every heart bowed to him. Every soul feared him, except hers. When he turned to leave, she followed. Her hands trembled, her throat dry, but her heart beat with wild certainty. She found him alone at the edge of the forest, the moonlight painting his hair silver. He did not turn when she spoke his name, perhaps because he already knew she would come. "Kael," she whispered, her voice softer than the wind. "I need to tell you something." He stood still for a moment, his back to her, the muscles in his shoulders tense. "You shouldn't be here, Luna," he said, his tone flat, almost bored. "This ground is not for Omegas." Her heart squeezed, but she pressed on. "I know what I am," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "But I also know what I feel." He finally turned, and his eyes met hers, cold, sharp, and unreadable. "What you feel," he repeated. "Do you think I care about the feelings of a weakling?" His words cut deeper than claws. Still, she didn't move. She stood there, shaking, fragile as glass, yet unwilling to break. "I've loved you since we were children," she whispered. "Not because you're Alpha, but because I see the man beneath it. I see your pain, your loneliness. You don't have to walk it alone." For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not tenderness, but something darker. He stepped closer, towering over her. "Love," he murmured, the word dripping with mockery. "You speak of love as if it's enough to feed a pack, as if it can protect us from enemies. Love doesn't make you strong, Luna. It makes you weak." Her voice broke. "Then let me be weak." Kael's expression hardened. "I cannot afford weakness." He raised his hand, and the air around them trembled. His wolf energy flared, wild, crushing, merciless. "From this night forward," he said coldly, "you will not speak my name again. You will not look for me. You will remember your place, far beneath me." She felt the air leave her lungs. Her knees gave out and she fell to the ground, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she whispered, "don't do this. You once said every wolf deserves a place under the moon. Don't cast me into darkness." Kael turned his back on her. "Then find a moon that will have you." And he walked away. The moment he did, the clouds split, and the moon above cracked in two, a crimson line slashing across its surface. The pack would later call it a sign of omen. For Luna Arwen, it was the night her world ended. She left the pack before dawn. No one stopped her. No one looked back. The forest swallowed her whole, her tears blending with the morning mist. She walked for days without direction, guided only by heartbreak and hunger. Every step away from Kael felt like walking barefoot through fire, yet she did not turn back. In the wilds beyond Blood Moon territory, rogues roamed and monsters hunted, but even they seemed to sense her brokenness. They watched her from the shadows but did not attack, perhaps pitying her, perhaps fearing the strange energy that pulsed faintly beneath her despair. For beneath her fragile heart, something ancient stirred. It whispered through her dreams, a voice she had never heard before, deep and feminine, carrying the weight of stars. Rise, child of the Silverfang. The blood of Alphas runs through your veins. You are not broken. You are becoming. At first, Luna thought it was madness, the fevered imagination of a starving girl. But the dreams persisted, guiding her toward the mountains where the moonlight burned brighter than anywhere else. Days turned to weeks. Her body weakened, but her will sharpened. The pain that had once broken her now forged her into something new. Every scar became a vow, every tear, a promise. One night, as she collapsed beneath a tree, she looked up at the sky, at the broken moon that still hung, cracked in bleeding light. If the goddess truly watches, she whispered, then let her make me strong, not so I can be loved, but so I can never kneel again. The wind howled in answer, and for the first time, she howled back. It was a raw, defiant sound, not of surrender but of rebirth. That night her transformation began. The power that slept within her veins awakened like a storm. Her blood shimmered silver beneath her skin. Her eyes, once dull and tear-filled, glowed faintly with light. She felt her wolf stir, ancient, mighty, and unchained. The voice returned, clearer now. Remember this pain, for it will be your crown. When morning came, she was no longer the same. Luna Arwen, the girl who once knelt, rose as something else. She was not yet an alpha, not yet whole, but she had taken her first step toward destiny. The path ahead would be long and cruel. She would meet wolves who wanted her dead, packs that sought to use her power, and a past that refused to let her go. But she would no longer run, because somewhere deep inside, beneath the wounds and longing, she knew the truth. She was meant for more than love. She was meant for leadership. And one day, when the broken moon healed, she would return, not as the girl who was rejected, but as the woman every alpha would bow to. She would see Kael again, and when she did, the alpha who once looked down on her would finally understand what it meant to kneel. The first light of dawn crept over the mountains, pale and uncertain, brushing the treetops in silver. Luna Arwen opened her eyes to a world that no longer knew her name. The air was sharp with the scent of pine and frost. Each breath scraped her throat, and her body ached as if the forest itself had tested her through the night. For a moment she lay still, listening to the wind as it moved through the branches like a whispering choir. The silence hurt more than the cold. In that silence she kept waiting, foolishly, for Kael's voice to break it, for footsteps to appear through the mist, for someone to tell her it had all been a terrible mistake. No one came. When she tried to sit up, pain flared in her ribs. The stones beneath her cloak were wet with dew, and the faint smell of blood told her she had scraped herself raw during the night. Her hands shook as she brushed away leaves from her hair. She had never been this far from the Blood Moon borders before. The forest seemed larger now, almost sentient, watching her with unseen eyes. For a moment she considered turning back. Pride burned less than hunger, and the pack, even cruel, had food, warmth, and walls. But then the echo of Kael's words rolled through her mind again. You will remember your place, far beneath me. The memory cut deeper than the chill. She forced herself to stand. The day crawled by in silence. She walked until her feet blistered, then kept walking. Her once white ceremonial robe was smeared with dirt and torn by brambles. The sun climbed and fell, and still she pressed forward. Hunger became a constant companion, gnawing, whispering, tempting her to give up. Yet somewhere beneath the ache lived a stubborn spark, small, but alive. By the second night, her body could take no more. She sank beside a stream, watching her reflection tremble in the water. The face that stared back at her was hardly her own. Hollow eyes, cracked lips, the mark of exhaustion etched deep into her skin. She cupped water in her palms and drank, the cold biting at her teeth. When she looked again, for an instant, she thought she saw another reflection beside her, a man's face, silver-eyed and severe. Her heart lurched, but the image vanished with the next ripple. "Why can't I forget you?" she whispered. The forest offered no answer. Sleep took her in fragments. She dreamed of the pack hall, of Kael's gaze cutting through her, of a voice, hers or his, saying not enough, never enough. When she woke, her cheeks were wet. The stars above looked distant and cruel. As she moved through the forest the next day, weakness gnawed at her legs. She stumbled, fell, rose again. Once, when she tried to cross a narrow stream, her ankle twisted, sending her crashing into the water. The current dragged her a few feet before she clawed her way back to shore. Lying there, soaked and shaking, she almost laughed. The sound startled her. It was raw, almost feral. "So this is strength," she murmured. "Surviving what should have killed me." That night, the dreams changed. She was back beneath the broken moon. But this time, Kael stood closer, his expression unreadable. He reached out a hand toward her, and for a heartbeat she wanted to take it. But when her fingers brushed his, he dissolved into mist, leaving only the echo of his voice. "Find a moon that will have you." She woke with her heart pounding. The words no longer sounded cruel. They sounded like a challenge. Somewhere deep within, her wolf stirred. It wasn't a full awakening, just a flicker of instinct, a vibration under her skin. She felt her senses sharpen. The whisper of leaves, the distant call of an owl, the heartbeat of the forest itself. For the first time since leaving Blood Moon, she felt something other than pain. She felt alive. Morning came soft and gold. As she walked, she noticed tracks in the mud, small, delicate, like those of a pup. Following them, she found a tiny wolf cub trapped beneath a fallen branch, its paw pinned. It whimpered when she approached. "Easy, little one," she said, her voice hoarse. She crouched and lifted the branch with trembling hands. The cub pulled free, limping. Its fur was silver streaked with white, eyes bright and terrified. "You're far from home," Luna whispered. "Just like me." She tore a strip from her robe and bound the cub's paw. It licked her fingers, then nestled against her side. Warmth spread through her chest, soft but strong. For the first time in days, she smiled. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of danger. A predator, close. She looked up sharply, instincts surging. From the shadows emerged a wild boar, massive and snorting. Luna froze, clutching the cub. The creature charged. Without thinking, she turned her body to shield the cub and screamed, not in fear but fury. A sound tore from her throat that didn't feel human, a growl born of pain and will. The air trembled. Light, silver and violent, flared around her, forcing the boar to halt mid-charge. It squealed, turned, and fled into the forest. Luna stared at her hands. The silver glow faded slowly, leaving behind trembling fingers and a pounding heart. The cub whimpered softly and nuzzled her arm. "What was that?" she whispered, though a part of her already knew. The voice from her dreams returned, faint but clear. "Rise, child of the Silverfang." Luna closed her eyes. For the first time, she didn't feel like a broken omega. She felt like something waiting to be born. The forest grew quieter after the burst of silver light, as if the very air respected what had happened. Luna's heartbeat slowed, yet the memory of that glow lingered beneath her skin. She felt drained but strangely peaceful, the way a storm leaves the world cleansed. The small cub slept against her leg, breathing softly. For the first time since leaving the Blood Moon pack, she wasn't entirely alone. When dawn spilled across the trees, she rose. Mist drifted between the trunks, pale ribbons curling around her ankles. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but she was learning that pain could be endured. It no longer ruled her. She searched for berries, roots, anything edible. Each movement made her stronger, each decision her own. By the third morning, she had fashioned a crude shelter of branches near a rock face. The cub, she called him Ash, followed her everywhere, limping less each day. Sometimes she talked to him to fill the silence. "You're small," she told him, "but you don't run from shadows. Maybe that's courage." He would tilt his head as if he understood. Nights remained the hardest. The cold seeped through the ground, and with it came memories. She would see Kael's face as she had last seen it, stern, unyielding. Sometimes she wondered if he ever thought of her, or if she had already been erased from his mind. She told herself it didn't matter, but the ache beneath her ribs said otherwise. On the fifth night she dreamed again. In the dream she stood on the edge of a frozen lake. The moon above was whole, glowing like a wound healed by time. A wolf's silhouette appeared across the ice. It was vast, fur silver as the stars. Its eyes met hers and she felt recognition, not fear. The great wolf lowered its head and whispered, not in words, but in feeling, "Remember who you are becoming." She woke with tears on her cheeks and the echo of strength humming through her veins. That morning she noticed something new. When she focused, she could sense movement far beyond sight. The scurry of mice under roots, the flutter of birds preparing to fly. Her body responded to the rhythm of the forest. She was beginning to belong to something larger than pain. Days melted into weeks. Luna's limbs grew lean and sure, her steps light on the soil. The girl who had once trembled at a command now moved like a creature born of the wild. She learned to hunt small game, to read the wind, to follow the moon's pull. Yet inside, a quiet fear lingered. What if this strength was only temporary, a cruel gift that would fade as suddenly as it came? One evening she heard distant howls, wolf voices, raw and unfamiliar, a rogue pack passing through. Ash growled, fur bristling. Luna crouched beside him. Old instinct screamed to hide, but a new impulse urged her to stand. When the rogues emerged from the shadows, their eyes burned amber. They circled, curious rather than hostile. A tall she-wolf stepped forward, half-shifted, eyes the color of storm clouds. "You smell of alpha blood," she said slowly, "but you are no alpha." Luna met her gaze. Not yet. A ripple of laughter passed through the rogues, but it wasn't mocking, more like respect thinly veiled as disbelief. "Then walk carefully, girl," the leader said. "The wild tests those who claim power." When they vanished into the dark, Luna remained still for a long while, the words echoing. Claim power. It sounded like a promise, one she hadn't realized she had already made. Later, as fireflies drifted between the trees, she sat beside the stream again. Her reflection no longer looked fragile. There was steel beneath the surface now, quiet but certain. "I was weak," she whispered to the water, "and I loved him when I was. But if love is meant to cage me, then let it die." Ash whined softly. She smiled and stroked his fur. "Strength doesn't mean hating, little one. It means remembering without breaking." The wind stirred through the leaves, gentle this time, almost approving. Luna looked up at the broken moon and saw it differently. Not shattered, but divided into two halves that still gave light. Perhaps she was the same, part of her lost, part reborn, both shining in their own way. She lay down beside the cub and drifted to sleep, her heartbeat steady. In her dreams she walked through a valley of silver mist, each step lighting the ground beneath her. Ahead waited the faint outline of a throne carved from moonstone. She didn't reach it yet, but she knew it was hers. Dawn crept over the forest in bands of gold and gray, washing away the mist. Luna awoke before the sun touched her face. Her senses were sharper than ever. The faint heartbeat of the cub beside her, the rustle of dew-soaked leaves, even the slow churn of the river beyond the ridge. Everything was alive. Everything had a voice. She sat still for a long time, watching the light stretch across the earth. She could feel the rhythm of the forest now, not as a visitor, but as part of it. For days she had survived. Now she began to wonder if she was meant to do more than survive. Ash stirred beside her, licking her hand. "You're hungry again," she said softly, smiling. "Always hungry." But when she rose to hunt, she saw something that stopped her heart cold. Smoke. A black thread of it rising in the distance just beyond the river bend. Her instincts flared. Fire was rare this deep in the wilderness, and it wasn't natural. Not that color, not that smell. She grabbed her cloak, slung it around her shoulders, and started toward it. Ash followed close, silent now, sensing her unease. As she approached the clearing, the scent grew stronger. Burned fur, ash, blood. When she finally saw what remained, she froze. The rogue pack she'd met days ago lay scattered like shadows turned to flesh. The fire still hissed from dying embers. The she-wolf leader, the one with storm-gray eyes, was sprawled at the center, her body torn. Luna knelt beside her. The woman's eyes fluttered open faintly. "They came. From the south," she rasped. "Not hunters, not men, wolves, marked with red." Luna's breath caught. Red-marked wolves, the symbol of Kael's blood moon pack. Her heart battled itself. Part of her wanted to run, to hide, to stay the quiet ghost she'd become. But another part, the new part, burned hotter than the fire around her. The dying rogue's hand gripped her wrist weakly. "You have power," she whispered. "Use it. Don't let them take more." Then her fingers slackened. Luna stood, trembling. The cub whimpered at her feet. All around them the smell of loss hung heavy in the air. For a moment, she was that broken girl again, the one who'd fled in silence, who'd thought freedom was the same as safety. But as the wind picked up and tossed her hair across her face, something shifted inside her. She lifted her chin and stared toward the southern horizon. "I ran once," she said aloud, her voice low but steady. "I won't run again." The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, without hesitation, Luna drew her dagger and carved a symbol into the bark of the nearest tree, a crescent moon intersected by a single line. Her mark, her vow. "This place," she whispered, "is under my protection." She looked down at Ash. "And so are you." For the first time since she had left Kael's territory, the fear inside her didn't feel like weakness. It felt like fuel. That night she didn't hide. She built a fire that reached high into the sky, a beacon instead of a shield. The moon rose above her, fractured, yet beautiful. She lifted her face toward it and closed her eyes. "I don't know what I'm meant to become," she said to the night, "but I know what I won't be anymore." The wind shifted, carrying her words through the trees, over the mountains, toward lands where others would one day whisper her name. The girl who once fled in silence had spoken her first command to the world, and the world had listened. The morning after Luna's vow was quiet. Eerily quiet. The forest that had once whispered warnings now seemed to watch her with silent approval. Dew clung to the grass like shattered glass, and her fire had burned down to ash. She rose, stretching her sore limbs, feeling something unfamiliar humming beneath her skin. Strength. It wasn't the kind of strength she had begged for back in Kael's pack, the kind measured in dominance or scars. This was quieter, deeper. It pulsed in her chest, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. She looked toward the mark she had carved into the tree the night before, the crescent intersected by a line. It was crude, uneven, but it was hers. She touched it lightly and whispered, "I will not bow again." The cub, Ash, bounded up beside her, tail flicking. His golden eyes shone bright with hunger and trust. "All right," she said, half smiling. "Let's find breakfast." They moved through the forest, past the ruins of the rogue camp she'd found burned days before. The smell of smoke had faded, but the memory hadn't. Luna had buried their bodies herself, whispering quiet prayers for wolves who had died nameless. That act alone had changed something in her. Once, she'd been afraid to touch death. Now she treated it with reverence, not fear. The wind carried a new scent, meat, roasting. Her stomach twisted painfully. She crouched low, creeping toward the source. Through the trees, she saw a campfire ringed with strangers, rogues. 4 of them, dirty and sharp-eyed. Their laughter was harsh but not cruel, more like survivors sharing scraps of warmth in a cold world. Luna hesitated. Rogues were unpredictable, but the hunger clawing at her ribs pushed her forward. She stepped into the clearing slowly, hands raised. "I mean no harm." The rogues turned instantly, weapons half drawn, instincts flaring. The leader, a tall, broad man with gray in his beard, sniffed the air. "A lone she-wolf," he said, narrowing his eyes. "Far from any pack scent, brave or foolish." "Hungry," she replied simply. He studied her a moment longer, then lowered his weapon. "Hungry wolves don't last long out here. Sit." Relief softened her shoulders. She sat near the fire as they passed her a piece of roasted rabbit. The meat was coarse but heavenly. For a few precious minutes, the world didn't feel hostile. They talked little. Rogues rarely trusted words, but when the gray-bearded one spoke, Luna learned his name was Garen, and his group was made of wolves cast out by their packs. Betrayers, exiles, survivors. One woman, lean and scarred, met Luna's eyes with curiosity. "You smell like power," she said, "not like an Omega." Luna stiffened. "I was one," she said. "Once." Garen raised a brow. "No one stops being Omega unless they die or what?" she asked quietly. "Or they change," he said, eyes gleaming in the firelight. The words lingered long after silence fell again. When night came, Luna sat apart from them, watching the flames twist and dance. Ash curled beside her, snoring softly. She could still hear Kael's voice in the wind sometimes, stern, cold, a phantom she couldn't escape. But tonight, another voice joined it, her own, stronger. "Change," she whispered. "Then I will." She didn't know that the first step toward that change would come with betrayal and fire. By dawn, the rogues had already packed their things. Garen's group moved with the instinctive silence of those who lived by caution and speed. Luna followed them, unsure why. Maybe because solitude had lost its comfort, or maybe because something in Garen's words had struck deep. The road ahead wound through an old forest where the trees were older than any pack legend. Moss thickened underfoot. The air was cool, tinted with mist. "We're heading south," Garen said. "Old ruins. There's shelter there." "Ruins of what?" Luna asked. He gave her a sideways glance. "Of a pack that burned itself alive." Luna said nothing. The forest seemed to breathe heavier after that. They reached the ruins before dusk, crumbling stone arches half buried by vines. The air was thick with echoes of the past. Luna could almost hear howls in the distance that no longer existed. They built a fire under the remains of an ancient watchtower. The others drank, laughed, and shared stories of foolish alphas they'd once served. But Luna kept quiet, watching the shadows dance across the walls. One of the rogues, a young man named Theron, with restless eyes and 2 bright smiles, sat near her. "You're not like the others," he said. "Too clean, too careful." "I'm learning," she replied. He leaned closer, voice low. "You'll never survive out here if you keep trusting anyone, not even us." "I don't trust you," she said simply. He laughed softly. "Good. Then maybe you'll last." but she noticed his hand lingered near the dagger at his belt even as he smiled. That night, Luna dreamed of fire again. Not the fire of the rogues' camp, but the fire from her rejection, the fire that had burned through her heart the night Kael told her she was nothing. Only this time, the flames didn't consume her. They came from her. Her hands, her breath, her blood, all glowing with a strange red light. She woke with a gasp. The ruins were dark except for dying embers. Garen was gone. So were two others. Then came a scream. Luna bolted upright, eyes wide. She saw movement near the edge of the ruins, figures clashing, shadows slicing through mist. Theron ran past her, panting, eyes wild. They turned on us. Garen's dead. But before he could finish, a blade flashed in the dark, catching him clean across the throat. He fell at her feet, eyes frozen open. Luna staggered back. 3 wolves stepped from the shadows, rogues she hadn't met before, larger, meaner, eyes burning red. The tallest smiled. "You shouldn't have stayed, little one." Luna's instincts screamed run, but something in her refused. She crouched low, teeth bared. The cub growled beside her, tiny but fierce. One of the attackers lunged. She dodged barely, feeling claws rake her shoulder. Pain exploded through her arm, but it was pain that woke something deeper. The air trembled, her heartbeat thundered in her skull. The wolf came again. This time she met him head-on. When his claws struck, she caught his wrist and twisted, and fire erupted from her palm. Real fire. It seared his skin, forcing him back with a howl. The others froze. So did Luna. The flames licked across her arm, but did not burn her. They obeyed her. "What are you?" one of them whispered. Luna didn't answer. She didn't know. But for the first time, she didn't feel weak. They attacked again, and she moved without thought, every motion guided by something ancient inside her. Her body burned with light. Her voice filled the ruins with a sound halfway between a growl and a command. "Leave," she said, her tone cold, her eyes glowing like molten gold. The rogues hesitated, then fled. When silence returned, Luna stood trembling, breath ragged, arms still aflame until she willed it to dim. Ash whimpered and pressed close to her leg. Luna stared at her hands in disbelief. "What have I become?" she whispered. The answer came not from the forest, but from a soft voice behind her. "You've become what you always were," it said. Luna turned sharply. An old woman stood there, cloaked in gray, her eyes reflecting the same fire that now flickered in Luna's. The old woman's voice was neither threat nor comfort, but something older, like the echo of a prophecy that had been waiting to be spoken. Her steps were slow, measured, deliberate. The glow from the dying fire caught the silver strands in her hair and made them shimmer like moonlight woven into darkness. Luna's first instinct was to back away, but the woman lifted a hand. "I am not your enemy, child." "Who are you?" Luna asked, still catching her breath, her hands trembling. "How did you find me?" "I have been following the wind," the woman said. "And the wind follows power. You burned through the night like a beacon." Luna glanced at her hands again, still faintly glowing beneath the skin. "I don't understand what happened." "You wouldn't," the woman murmured, stepping closer. "Not yet. They hid it from you. Your pack, your alpha, even your bloodline." The word bloodline made Luna's heart stutter. "What do you mean?" The woman's eyes softened. "You think yourself an Omega. You think weakness is your nature. But your mother was not Omega-born, nor was her mother. You are descended from the Silverfang line, the Alphas who once ruled before the Blood Moon pack rose to power." Luna's breath hitched. "That's not possible. The Silverfangs are legend. They vanished centuries ago." "Legends don't vanish," the woman said. "They sleep until the world needs them again." The flames of the ruined camp flickered brighter, as if answering her words. Luna stood frozen, the pieces of her life rearranging themselves in her mind. Her mother, quiet and kind, who had always told her, Never forget what you are, even if the world does. Kael, who had looked at her like something fragile to be discarded. The strange pulse that had followed her since birth, the way the moonlight sometimes felt like it recognized her. Everything clicked into a truth too large to deny. "I'm an alpha?" she whispered. The woman nodded. "Your blood carries the mark of command. It was bound when you were born, hidden by your mother to protect you from those who would use or kill you for it. But pain breaks seals, and your suffering has freed what was sleeping." Luna stared into the fire, her mind reeling. "Kael called me weak." He saw what he was told to see. The woman said gently, "Men of power often fear what they cannot control. The Blood Moon Alpha line took what once belonged to yours. You loving him was a cruel twist of fate, but perhaps a necessary one." Luna turned toward her. "Necessary?" The woman smiled faintly. "Because love tempered your rage. It made you human before it made you powerful. A leader without compassion is just another tyrant. You will not repeat his mistakes." The words sank deep into Luna's soul. She felt the truth of them in her bones. The wind stirred around them, carrying the scent of rain and ash. The woman tilted her head, listening to something unseen. "The world is shifting. The Alphas will soon know a new moon rises." Then, as suddenly as she'd appeared, the old woman began to fade into mist. "Wait," Luna called. "Will I see you again?" "When the moon breaks once more," the woman's voice echoed faintly, "you'll know where to find me." And then she was gone. Luna stood alone in the ruins, the cub pressed against her leg, the fire casting her shadow long and tall against the stones. She looked down at her hands and saw faint silver veins glowing beneath her skin. She wasn't the girl who had knelt before Kael anymore. That girl had died with the broken moon. This was something new, something ancient, reborn. The forest seemed to hum around her, every leaf and root whispering her name. She straightened her spine and lifted her chin to the wind. "I am Luna Arwen of the Silverfang line," she said quietly. "Daughter of the moon's fire. The weak have burned away." Thunder rolled across the distant mountains like applause, and in the silence that followed, she heard a sound she couldn't mistake. Somewhere far away, a wolf howled. It was deep, familiar, aching. Kael. Her heart trembled, not with fear or longing, but with resolve. The bond between them was not broken, it was being rewritten. The Alpha who had once rejected her would one day bow before her strength, not out of submission, but in awe. For now she turned her back to the ruins, to the ashes of betrayal and the ghosts of her past, and walked into the wild night. The fire within her pulsed brighter with every step, and above her, the broken moon began to mend. The moon hung low that night, silver and swollen, as though it too waited for her to awaken. Luna Arwen stood on the edge of the ravine where the rogues had once tried to bury her name. Her body still bore the faint scars of betrayal, but her spirit, her once fragile, trembling spirit, had become something unrecognizable. It had been weeks since her power first erupted, weeks since the healer had whispered the word Silverfang with reverent fear. At first, she thought it was a curse. Power like hers did not belong to an Omega. It did not belong to someone who had been spat on, rejected, and forgotten. But now she knew better. The blood that ran in her veins was not born of weakness. It was ancient, royal, and untamed. The world had changed inside her. She could feel it with every breath, every heartbeat. The wind that once stung her cheeks now bowed to her command, swirling in gentle patterns around her. The earth beneath her feet thrummed when she spoke her true name. She had not spoken it aloud since Kael's rejection. To him, she had been nothing but a soft-spoken Omega with eyes too gentle and a heart too loyal. He had called her Little One, and it had once melted her heart. Now, the memory burned like a brand. She whispered her full name into the night. Luna Arwen Silverfang, and the forest stirred in acknowledgement. Her wolf, the one she thought she'd lost when Kael shattered her heart, surged forward within her chest. It wasn't the trembling creature she once knew. It was something vast, radiant, and wild. The first transformation came with agony. Bones shifted, muscles burned. Her body bowed beneath the pressure of her bloodlines awakening. But beneath the pain, there was glory. When it was over, the river reflected her new form, a wolf with silver fur streaked by faint patterns of moonlight. Her eyes, no longer soft brown, glowed with a deep amethyst hue that spoke of both danger and grace. She had become something the world had forgotten, a female alpha. Days turned into weeks as she learned to command her new self. The forest became her training ground. The wind was her sparring partner, the moon, her silent mentor. Each night she hunted with precision. Each dawn she trained her body to obey her will. Hunger, pain, exhaustion. They were no longer her enemies, they were her teachers. There were moments when doubt crept in, when the image of Kael's cold eyes haunted her again, when she wondered if all of this strength, all of this transformation, would mean anything if the man she once loved could never see her as his equal. But then, she'd remember his words. "You'll never lead anyone, Luna. You were born to serve, not command." She'd repeat them to herself like a vow, and each time, she broke the curse of his voice with her own. "I was born to rule," she whispered one night, her reflection glowing fiercely in the river. That was the night she claimed her destiny. The rogues who once betrayed her heard of her awakening and returned, driven by greed and fear. They thought her the same helpless girl they had abandoned. They thought wrong. When they found her by the clearing, she did not run. Her silver wolf emerged from the shadows, graceful yet terrifying, her aura pulsing like a living storm. The first rogue lunged at her, claws ready to tear through flesh, but she moved like the wind, silent and devastating. Her power rippled through the air, bending the trees, forcing even the strongest of them to their knees. They called her a monster. She called it evolution. By dawn, the ground was soaked with the proof of her power, but she didn't kill them all. No, she spared the youngest rogue, a trembling boy barely older than she was when Kael rejected her. "Tell the packs," she said, her voice echoing with authority she never had before. "The Silverfang has risen." And he ran, stumbling, breathless, half in awe, half in terror. She knew word of her would spread. She knew whispers would reach Kael's ears. But she wasn't doing this for him. Not anymore. She was building something greater, a legacy, a haven for those like her. The broken, the outcast, the ones the world had labeled weak. Her journey from Omega to Alpha had not just remade her. It had awakened a purpose larger than love or revenge. She was no longer the girl who waited to be chosen. She was the woman who chose herself. The fire within had turned into a storm, and for the first time in her life, the storm obeyed her. Days bled into nights, and Luna's name spread through the borderlands like wildfire. The Silverfang wolf, some called her a myth, others a threat, but all spoke her name with trembling respect. Packs that once mocked her lineage now whispered in fear when her scent brushed their borders. She lived alone at first, building a home from the wild itself. The forest bent to her will, its creatures no longer hiding but watching her with quiet reverence. She built her den near the river that had reflected her transformation, not out of sentiment but as a symbol. The river had witnessed her rebirth. It would now witness her rule. But power draws the broken as light draws the lost. The first to come was a scarred she-wolf named Morella, once beaten and cast out for defying her alpha. She appeared one night, half-starved, trembling, and desperate. Luna remembered too well the ache of hunger and the sting of rejection, so she did not turn her away. When Morella knelt before her and whispered, "Alpha," the word struck something deep in Luna's chest. It was the first time anyone had spoken that word to her, not in mockery but in faith. Soon more came. Rogues, outcasts, omegas, and even a few who fled their packs after seeing their alpha's cruelty. They came because they heard of a silver wolf who spared the weak and punished the wicked. They came because they wanted to belong to something pure, and thus, the Silverfang pack was born, a gathering of the broken who became whole beneath her command. Leadership was not easy. The wolves looked to her for strength, for decisions, for discipline. There were nights she doubted herself, wondering if she had the right to lead when she once couldn't even stand before Kael without trembling. But every dawn, when her wolves howled together, she remembered why she had risen. This was no longer about one man or one rejection. This was about rewriting the story of what power meant. The first true test of her leadership came when a rival Alpha sought to claim her territory. Alpha Darius of the Iron Fangs, a ruthless leader who believed no woman could hold a pack. He came with 20 wolves and a smirk that reminded her too much of Kael. "You've made quite the legend for yourself," he said, circling her like a predator that already believed the hunt was won. "A female alpha? The moon must be laughing." Luna stood in the clearing, her silver hair catching the light of the dawn. She did not bare her fangs. She did not roar. Her silence was sharper than claws. "The moon doesn't laugh," she said softly. "It remembers." And then she moved. The battle was brief but unforgettable. Darius struck first, expecting fear. What he met instead was precision, every motion of hers a dance between grace and fury. The power of her bloodline flared in her veins. Her wolf erupted with silver flames that lit the clearing. The Iron Fangs fell to their knees. Darius lay beneath her, defeated but alive. She looked down at him, eyes glowing like molten amethyst. "You came to destroy me," she said, "but all you've done is prove me right." When she released him, she turned her back, an act of dominance no alpha dared to do. He rose slowly, humiliated. But when he looked at her again, his gaze held something unexpected: respect. From that day, none doubted her claim. Word spread across the regions. A new alpha had risen, one not born of lineage or gender, but of sheer will. Yet with power came silence. And in silence, old memories stirred. Sometimes when the moon rose high and the forest slept, she thought of Kael. Not with the softness of love, but with the ache of unfinished truth. She wondered if he had heard of her, if her name haunted his dreams, as his had once haunted hers. But she never spoke his name aloud again, because the woman she was now owed her heart to no one but herself. Still, the bond between mates, that cruel, invisible thread the moon forged, had not broken. She could feel it, faint but real, tugging sometimes when she least expected. It was a reminder that fate was not done with them yet. And though she tried to ignore it, deep down, she knew that her path and Kael's were destined to cross again. But when that day came, she would not be the trembling Omega who knelt before him. She would be the Alpha who made even the moon bow. The night of her ascension came without invitation. No heralds, no drums, only a sky carved open by the full moon, bright as a promise. Luna stood upon the stone ridge above the valley where her pack slept. Mist rolled between the trees like silver smoke, and the river beneath shimmered as if the stars had spilled into it. Every breath she took tasted of storm and destiny. For moons she had ruled the Silverfangs, but tonight she felt something older stirring, the call of her bloodline, the summons of the ancient alphas whose spirits still guarded the mountains. The healer's words returned to her. When the moon turns its full face upon you, your wolf will answer her completely. Do not fear the fire, child. Become it. She knelt on the cold stone, not in weakness but reverence. The wind coiled around her shoulders. The forest hushed. "Moon Mother," she whispered, "if I was ever meant for this, show me." Light answered. It began as a pulse beneath her skin, spreading until her whole body glowed like molten silver. The mark on her wrist, The faint crescent that had appeared after her first awakening burned brighter, shifting into the shape of a fanged moon. She gasped, but the pain felt holy. Then came the voices, soft at first like sighs in the wind, growing into a chorus that filled the night. Daughter of Silverfang, keeper of balance, rise. The earth trembled. The river rose in mist. She felt her wolf surge forward, not in rage this time, but in surrender, a perfect merging. Her human and wolf souls twined until they were one heartbeat, one breath, one being. Her body shifted, graceful and fierce. When the light faded, the creature that stood on the ridge was no longer the girl who had once knelt before Alpha Kael. She was something elemental. Her fur gleamed with silver fire. Her eyes burned the color of amethyst dawn. Around her paws the ground shimmered, frost and flame intertwined. The spirits bowed. For the first time in centuries, the moon herself had chosen a daughter to carry the alpha flame, and Luna Arwen Silverfang accepted it without fear. She lifted her muzzle and howled, a sound that split the clouds and sent ripples through the valley. Every wolf below woke at once, their hearts seizing in awe. One by one they emerged from their dens, tilting their heads to the sky and answering her call. It wasn't just a howl, it was a vow. A declaration that the age of silence was over, that strength no longer wore a man's face. When the echoes faded, she shifted back, barefooted and breathless beneath the moonlight. Power hummed through her veins like a living current. Her wolves gathered below, their eyes wide. Morella stepped forward first and knelt. "Alpha," she breathed. Then the others followed, 100 voices uniting in the same word. Luna looked at them, the broken who had become strong, the lost who had found home, and her chest ached with a fierce, boundless love. "We are Silverfang," she said. "We rise for those who cannot. We lead not by fear but by flame." A soft wind stirred, carrying her words across the lands, past borders and rivers, toward packs who would soon learn her name. Somewhere far away, Kael would hear that wind, and the mate bond would quiver between them like a struck chord. But that was for another chapter. Tonight belonged to her, to the girl who was once powerless, to the woman who became legend. As dawn broke, the last of the moonlight lingered on her skin, tracing her like a crown. Her wolves slept at peace, and the forest sang again. Luna closed her eyes and let the warmth of morning touch her face. She was no longer just Luna Arwen. She was the Silverfang Alpha, first of her kind, daughter of the broken moon, sovereign of her own destiny. And somewhere in the quiet between heartbeats, the Moon Mother whispered, "You were never weak, child. You were only waiting to remember who you are." I never imagined I would return to the halls of the council, at least not as someone who held power. Once upon a time, I walked behind others, eyes lowered, shoulders bowed beneath the weight of my own insignificance. But now, as I stepped into the grand chamber of the moon summit, the air trembled with my presence. Wolves from every corner of the land turned to look, their whispers rising like waves against the marble walls. The banners of each pack hung from the vaulted ceiling, emerald, gold, crimson, and silver, and in the center, the crest of my pack gleamed for the first time in years. The Silverfang pack. My pack. The guards at the entrance bowed their heads. I could feel their awe, their confusion. They had never seen a female alpha before, at least not one still standing. My power hummed quietly beneath my skin, coiled and disciplined. It was the fire I had forged in exile, shaped from pain, betrayal, and rebirth. I carried it not as a weapon, but as a crown. And then, I felt him, Kael. Even before I saw him, my senses betrayed me. His scent, cedar, smoke, and storm, cut through the crowd like a blade. It hit me so sharply that I forgot to breathe for a heartbeat. When I finally lifted my gaze, there he was across the chamber, speaking with the High Alpha of the North. He had changed. The wildness that used to burn in him had sharpened into something colder, more controlled. His dark hair brushed his collar, his jawline stronger, his shoulders broader. But his eyes, those silver-gray eyes I had once adored, were the same. Only now, they looked lost. For a moment the world blurred, and I was that fragile girl again, the Omega who had knelt before him beneath a broken moon, the one who had begged for love and received only silence. But that girl was gone. Dead, buried beneath the ashes of who I used to be. The murmurs in the hall swelled when the herald's voice rang out, presenting the Alpha of the Silverfang pack, Luna Arwen of the Crescent bloodline. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My name, once whispered in mockery, now fell like thunder in the hall. Kael's head snapped toward me. Our eyes met across the distance. For a long, searing moment, neither of us moved. I saw disbelief flicker first, then recognition, and finally, something deeper. Regret. I held his gaze. I didn't smile. I didn't bow. I simply walked forward, each step echoing like a declaration. I am not yours to dismiss anymore. When I reached the council table, I took my seat among the other alphas, feeling the old wolves watching me, judging me. But I had learned long ago that power needs no explanation. It speaks for itself. The High Alpha began to speak of border disputes, rogue attacks, alliances, but my thoughts kept circling back to Kael. He sat 3 chairs away, silent but restless. I could feel the weight of his stare like heat against my skin. He was no longer looking at me as a broken girl. He was looking at me as an equal, or perhaps something even more dangerous. When the council adjourned for the day, I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. Arwen. It was just my name, but the sound of it nearly undid me. I turned slowly, meeting his eyes again. You're alive, he said, as if the words themselves were unreal. His voice was low, rough, almost reverent. They told me you were gone. A faint smile touched my lips. And you believed them? He took a step closer. I searched for you. I doubt that. My tone was calm, cold. The years had taught me to keep my emotions buried, where no one could reach them. But it doesn't matter anymore, does it, Alpha Kael? He flinched, barely, but I saw it. The title cut deeper than any insult could. I didn't know what I was losing, he murmured. Then consider this your reminder. I moved past him, my shoulder brushing his as I walked away. Behind me, I heard him whisper, almost to himself, "You're different." I paused for just a moment, then replied, "No, I just stopped begging for your approval." And with that, I left him standing there, surrounded by the ghosts of what we used to be. That night, the moon summit lay quiet under a silver sky. The chamber lights had dimmed, the laughter of alphas and their guests faded into distant echoes. Only the wind whispered through the courtyard where marble wolf statues stood guard beneath the stars. I stood alone by the reflecting pool, the moon's glow rippling across the water. The air was still yet heavy with memory. My reflection stared back. Not the frail Omega I once was, but the woman I had become, power incarnate, wrapped in calm and shadow. Behind me, footsteps approached, slow, hesitant, familiar. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. "You always liked the quiet places," Kael said, his voice soft, carrying the weight of years unsaid. "And you," I murmured, "always found a way to disturb them." He stopped a few steps behind me. Silence stretched between us, the kind that binds and burns at the same time. "I meant what I said earlier," he began. "When they told me you were dead, You mourned for a day and forgot me," I interrupted, still watching my reflection ripple. "Don't rewrite history, Kael. You were good at forgetting." He exhaled, the sound jagged. I deserved that. I finally turned to face him. The moonlight painted his face in shades of regret. Sharp, beautiful, broken. The proud alpha of the Bloodthorn pack stood before me, but his eyes were unguarded for the first time since I'd known him. "You think regret makes things right?" I asked quietly. No, he said, but it's all I have left. The words hung between us, raw and trembling. For a heartbeat, the world felt small again, just him and me beneath the broken moon, like it had been that night years ago. Except this time, I was not the one on my knees. Kael stepped closer, slowly, as though afraid I might vanish again. Arwen, what happened to you out there? You disappeared into the wild. Everyone thought. I died, I finished for him. And maybe I did. The girl you knew did not survive the forest, Kael. The rogues made sure of that. He frowned. The rogues? Yes. My voice was steady, but my heart twisted at the memories. They found me when I had nothing left. No home, no power, no reason to live. I learned to fight, to lead, to bleed without breaking. They became my pack, until they turned on me. His brows furrowed, anger flickering in his eyes. They betrayed you? They feared me, I corrected. Because the moment my bloodline awoke, I stopped being their equal. I became their alpha. For the first time, he seemed speechless. His gaze drifted to the silver streaks that laced through my dark hair, the mark of the crescent bloodline, the power that ran through my veins. The legends were true then, he murmured. The crescent blood still exists. In me, I said simply. He took another step forward. You've changed. I had to. He nodded slowly, almost in awe. You're stronger now. I was always strong, I replied, my tone soft but cutting. You just never looked close enough to see it. Kael's jaw tightened. He seemed to fight with himself, the alpha within him warring against something far more vulnerable. Finally, he said, Arwen, I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed, not bitterly, but with the quiet ache of someone who had outgrown the wound. You didn't want to hurt me, Kael. You just didn't care if you did. The silence that followed was heavier than before. I saw the truth flash in his eyes. The shame, the longing, the love he had buried too late. He moved to stand beside me, his reflection joining mine in the water. For a moment we were two wolves again, side by side, separated only by time and pride. You lead now, he said softly. I saw how they looked at you today. They fear you, and they respect you. I tilted my head. And what about you? He hesitated. I can't stop looking at you. The word struck something deep inside me, that fragile place I thought I'd sealed away forever. But I refused to let him see it. So I turned, my voice steady. Then look all you want, Kael, but remember, you had your chance to see me when I needed you most. I started to walk away, but his hand shot out, gently catching my wrist. His touch burned like a memory I'd tried to erase. Arwen, he whispered, tell me there's nothing left. Tell me you feel nothing for me now and I'll let you go. I froze. The moon hung above us like an unblinking eye. Tell him, I told myself. Tell him it's over. Tell him he's nothing but a chapter long closed. But the words wouldn't come. Because somewhere beneath the armor, beneath the pride and pain, the girl who once loved him still drew breath. I pulled my hand free. You don't get to ask that, I said quietly. Not after what you did. And before he could speak again, I turned and walked into the night, my footsteps echoing softly against the marble, my heart warring between fury and the echo of something dangerously close to love. The night stretched long after I left the courtyard. Sleep would not come. The echoes of his voice haunted the edges of my mind, the sound of my name on his lips, the tremor of sincerity I had once begged for. I told myself it meant nothing, that Kael's regret could not rewrite the years of silence, the years I spent clawing my way out of the ruins he left behind. And yet, under the pale light of the moon, I could still feel his eyes on me. When dawn began to touch the mountains, a knock sounded at my door. I opened it to find Kael standing there unguarded without his alpha cloak or pride, just a man, tired and raw. "May I come in?" he asked. I should have said no. But my heart, foolish, loyal, aching, betrayed me once again. I stepped aside. He entered quietly, his presence filling the small chamber. The air seemed to hum with everything left unsaid. He looked around the room as though trying to understand the woman I had become, but the truth was, he never truly knew me to begin with. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Then you should have stayed in your quarters," I replied. He smiled faintly. "I tried, but every time I closed my eyes I saw you walking away again." I folded my arms. "And whose fault was that the first time?" He sighed. "Mine. Entirely mine." The honesty in his tone caught me off guard. For a long time I had imagined how this moment would feel. Kyle admitting his mistake. But in my imagination it didn't hurt this much. "Arwen," he began, stepping closer. "When I rejected you, I thought I was protecting you. The council was pressuring me to take a mate of stronger blood, to secure alliances. You were weak," I finished, the word sharp as glass. "You can say it. That's what you saw." His eyes darkened. "No. That's what I told myself to believe because it was easier than admitting the truth, that I loved you, and it terrified me." The confession hit like a storm breaking open inside my chest. For a moment I couldn't breathe. "You loved me?" I echoed, disbelieving. "You had a cruel way of showing it." "I was a coward," he said. "I didn't know how to love someone who wasn't already strong. I thought you needed saving. I never realized you were destined to save yourself." My throat tightened. For the first time, his words weren't about power or dominance or bloodlines. They were stripped bare, human. I turned away, fighting the tremor in my hands. "You can't undo what you did, Kyle. The girl who begged for you, she's gone." "I know," he whispered. "And maybe I deserve to never have her back. But I see the woman standing before me now, fierce, untouchable, radiant, and I can't look away." He came closer until I could feel the heat of him at my back. The bond between us, that ancient invisible thread the moon itself had woven, pulled tight. It had never truly broken. It had just slept, waiting for this moment to awaken. "Say something," he pleaded. I turned slowly, and when I met his eyes, the world fell silent. For a heartbeat I saw everything. The Alpha who had hurt me, the man who had lost himself in ambition, and the soul now standing before me stripped of all armor. "You want forgiveness," I said. "You want me to look at you and forget what it felt like to be nothing. To erase the girl who cried under the moon while you turned away." "No," he said softly. "I want you to remember her. Because she's the reason you became what you are now. She's the one who taught you how to rise. I want to honor her, and the woman she became." Something inside me broke then. Not from pain, but from release. I had carried my rage for so long that it had become part of me. Like an old scar that no longer hurt but still ached when touched. And Kael's words. They didn't erase it, but they softened the edges. I stepped closer, close enough that our breaths mingled. "Why now, Kael?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Why love me now that I've become something powerful? Where was this love when I was weak?" He met my gaze without flinching. Because I didn't understand what strength looked like back then. I thought it meant control, dominance. But now I know strength is surviving everything I broke in you, and still having the heart to stand here. The world seemed to still around us. I could hear his heartbeat, wild, steady, real. "Say you'll let me prove it," he murmured. "Say I still have a chance to stand beside you." For a long moment I said nothing. I wanted to hate him. Gods, I tried to hate him. But hatred was a flame that burned out too quickly. What remained beneath it was something older, deeper, and far more dangerous. Slowly I reached up and placed my hand against his chest. His heart leapt beneath my touch. "You can stand beside me," I said, my voice quiet, powerful, unyielding, but never above me again. His breath caught, not from pride, but reverence, and for the first time, Kael bowed his head. "Then I will follow you, Luna of the Silverfang." The moon broke through the clouds just then, its light spilling across us both, the Alpha who fell and the Luna who rose. For a fleeting second, it felt as if the moon itself was bearing witness to what had been lost and found again. He lifted his hand, brushing his fingers against my cheek, hesitant but tender. "I never deserved you." "No," I whispered, "but maybe now you're learning to earn what you once took for granted." And then, for the first time since that night under the broken moon, our eyes met not as enemies, not as ghosts of what once was, but as two equals, bound by fire and forgiveness. The silence between us spoke more than words ever could. Outside, the first howl of dawn rose from the distant mountains, a new beginning echoing through the air. And beneath that sound, Kael whispered the words that made my heart stumble. "I fell for you when you became Alpha, but I realize now, I loved you even when you were weak." For once I didn't turn away. I let the warmth of his truth settle in my chest, not as surrender, but as peace. The past could not be rewritten, but the future. The moon had yet to decide. The war that had once torn the lands apart finally ended under a quiet dawn. The rogue threat was gone, the council restored, and the packs had found balance again, all under the steady leadership of the woman they once dismissed as a powerless Omega. Luna Arwen, of the Silverfang Pack. The first female Alpha in centuries. The title still felt strange on my tongue sometimes, not because I doubted my strength, but because power had once been the very thing used to silence me. And now, it was the voice through which I spoke, ruled, and healed. The moon hung low that night, full, radiant, unbroken, and for the first time in years I felt no bitterness when I looked upon it. The moon had watched me kneel in weakness. It had watched me bleed in exile. And now, it watched me stand, proud and unyielding, beside the man who had once been my greatest heartbreak. Kael stood at the edge of the balcony, his silver eyes fixed on the horizon. The wind tugged gently at his dark hair, carrying the faint scent of cedar and smoke, the scent that had once haunted me. Only now it didn't hurt. "Do you ever wonder?" he said quietly. "What would have happened if I had chosen differently back then?" I joined him, resting my hands on the cool stone railing. "No," I replied softly, "because if you had chosen me then, I wouldn't be who I am now." He turned to look at me, his expression thoughtful. "You've changed everything, Arwen. The council listens to you. The packs follow you, even the elders, the same ones who once said a woman could never lead, bow their heads when you speak. Not because I'm a woman," I said, "but because I proved that leadership isn't given. It's earned." He smiled faintly. "You've always had that fire. I just didn't see it." I met his gaze, calm but firm. "No, you saw it. You just feared it." Kael's smile faded into something gentler, more sincere. "You're right. I did. Power was something I wanted to possess, not something I wanted to stand beside. Until I lost you, and realized true strength isn't about control. It's about balance." He reached out slowly, giving me time to refuse. When I didn't, his hand found mine, warm and steady. "You balance me, Arwen." "Always have." For a long moment we stood there, two silhouettes bathed in moonlight, two hearts that had once clashed, now beating in rhythm again. "You've changed too," I said quietly. "You lead differently now. You listen more." He chuckled softly. "I had a good teacher." No, I corrected. You had a mirror. You just finally looked into it. The silence that followed was peaceful. The war, the exile, the betrayal, all of it felt distant now, like an old wound that had healed into a scar you could touch without pain. I no longer needed to forgive Kael, because forgiveness wasn't something I gave him. It was something I gave myself. The moonlight caught his eyes, turning them molten silver. I don't expect you to love me like before, he said, but I'll spend every day trying to deserve whatever part of you I still have. My heart ached, not from longing, but from quiet understanding. Kael, I said softly, love built on pity breaks. Love built on equality endures. He nodded slowly. Then I'll stand beside you, not as the Alpha who once broke you, but as the man who'll never let you stand alone again. And for once, the promise didn't feel like chains. It felt like freedom. I leaned closer, resting my forehead lightly against his. The world around us stilled. There were no pack titles here, no councils, no expectations, just two souls who had finally learned how to meet in the middle. The moon rose higher, its light spilling across the balcony, silver and pure. The same moon that had once watched me kneel now witnessed me rise, not alone, not in someone's shadow, but side by side with the one who had once cast it. Kael whispered, "Do you think the moon forgave us?" I smiled faintly. No. I think it simply waited for us to forgive ourselves. Below, the wolves of both our packs howled in unison, a haunting, beautiful sound that carried across the valley, the call of unity, of renewal, of two hearts once torn apart now beating in harmony. I looked up at the night sky, vast, infinite, serene. Once, I said quietly, I loved you when I was weak. Now, I love you because I'm strong. Kael's breath caught, his voice barely above a whisper. And I fell for you when you became Alpha, because only then did I truly see you. Our lips met beneath the light of the unbroken moon, not in desperation but in reverence. The past didn't vanish, but it no longer bound us. We had both bled for the same pain, and somehow through it all found our way back, not to who we were, but to who we were meant to be. When we finally pulled apart, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. Not dominance, not guilt, but respect. And in that moment, I knew the story wasn't ending. It was only changing shape. Two alphas, one bond, two souls, one heart. Under the moon's silver gaze, equal, eternal, and free.